All right, we are live. What is up, everybody? We're gonna finish the video that we started Wednesday, right? Yeah, it was Wednesday. This is pretty interesting, and this is getting into the we're getting we're getting into like the implications of what Dante's trying to say, and I feel like the first 15-ish minutes were more or less what setting up this conversation right here, but I think he's going to get into the questions that his students had about Dante. So, yeah, we're going to continue this pretty interesting video so far.
Next slide, please. Thank you. And I was now nearing him who is the end of desires, as I ought, live my longing towards ardent limit. Okay? Now, Don is turning towards God. Now is the time for him to experience God for the first time. Bernard was signaling. He smiled to me to turn my eyes on high. But I already was doing what he wanted me to do. Because my sight, becoming pure, was able to penetrate the ray of light more deeply. That light, sublime, which in itself is true. From that point on, what I could see was greater than speech can show. At such a sight, it
What's up, Just When Human? How's everything? God, why is my laptop overheating? I don't even have anything running. Okay.
it fails. And memory fails when faced with such excess. He's being blinded, okay? His mind is being blown apart. He does not know what he's seeing. It is so vast. It is so beautiful. It's so powerful
You moved in with your girlfriend. I'm so confused how fast this happened. Explain more.
that he's being blinded,
I don't
okay?
even know if I want to know.
Okay, next slide, please. In this profound ending, I saw
There's definitely some Gnostic allegory here because he is experiencing a flash of light, which is God. It's, I wonder if there's some like esoteric tie or he's purely just forming the foundations of it. I don't know. I haven't done enough research into the esoteric nature of Dante and perhaps his influences and perhaps what sprung out from the Divine Comedy.
and gathered and bound by love into one single volume. What in the universe seems separate, scattered, substances, accidents, and dispositions as it can join in such a way that what I tell is only rudimentary. What he's seeing is this. He's seeing God as the universe before the Big Bang. When the universe was this pool of substances that was chaotic, okay? And then the Big Bang released.
It's not necessarily that, it's just he's seeing everything all at once. And this is it's something that we can't even think about because imagine I mean I guess the Big Bang is a good idea of it that all mass in the entire universe came from the size of less than the top of a pin. And it's like, how does that even make sense? But at the same time, like it does because if you could zoom out far enough, you could see it. Again, it's paradox. You live in an apartment with her two cats? Well, good for you.
All of it into the universe, creating our universe. Dante is experiencing God as the universe before the Big Bang. And he's seeing how everything is connected. But he's immortal. He cannot connect all the pieces. He does not know what he's seeing. He just knows what he's seeing is so vast and interconnected. Okay? All right. Any questions so far?
It sounds so much like Gnosticism to me, is what I'm
All right.
getting.
Are we clear about what's happening? Okay, keep on going. So was my mind, completely wrapped, intent, steadfast, and motionless, gazing, and it grew ever more enkindled as it watched. Okay, so he's meditating. He's trained all his life for this one moment, and he's trying his best. Whoever sees that light is soon made such that it would be impossible for him to set that light aside for other sight. But he said, good, the object of the will is fully gathered in that light. Outside that light, what there is perfect is defective. Okay? God is good. The very goodness, okay, is in God. Okay, so think back to Plato. Goodness. It's encapsulated, embodied in God. Okay? It is what is perfect and good. Keep going. What little I recall is to be told from this point on in words more weak than those of one whose infant tongue still babes at the breast. Okay, so this is complicated, okay? But what he's saying is this. This is now 10, 20 years after his experience of God. And what he's doing is he's sitting by himself trying to write down what he saw.
So it's this almost the Taoist idea of the eternal Tao is not the one spoken of. The one we can put into words is missing the mark. Again, the Platonic idea of forms. We talked about it again. But think about it this way: if something was so powerful, if something was so um, large and grand and vast that could create everything, could we explain that thing? And that's really what he's trying to say is that how could we even, through our mortal eyes, through our mortal senses, how could we ever describe the infinite? And that's what he's trying to do.
He spent the past 10, 20 years writing Divine Comedy to share with the world the truth of God. And so it's not that experience, okay? That is now gone. It is now his imagination of that experience. All right? And not because more than one simple semblance was in the living light at which I gaze, for it is always what it was before. But through my sight, which as I gazed grew stronger, that so appearance, even as I altered, seemed to be changing in the deep and bright. Okay, can you continue, please? Essence of that exalted light. Three circles appeared to me. They had three different colors, but all of them were of the same dimension. Okay,
He's talking about the Trinity here, the mind, the body, the spirit, or the soul, whatever you want to call it. That's essentially like people don't get the Trinity. It's just the mind, body, the soul, the three aspects of man.
so he spent 20 years trying to figure out what he saw. And now he's able to slowly put the jigsaw puzzle together. And what he sees are three circles. And this, of course, is the Holy Trinity. So he's figured it out, okay? He's figured that the very essence of the universe, the very foundation of the universe is the Holy Trinity, okay? One circle seemed reflected by the second, as rainbow is by rainbow, and the third seemed fire breathed equally by those two circles. Separate but equal, okay? These are separate, but they're the same, the Holy Trinity. How incomplete
Separate but equal is a crazy way to. I don't think he knows the context of that phrasing.
is speech, how weak when said against my thought. And this to what
That's a separate but equal. If anyone knows Professor Zhang, they gotta tell him the context of saying that word or that phrasing.
I saw is such, to call it little is too much. Okay, he's figured
That's
it out. Next one, please. But he keeps on looking. And what does he see? Eternal light, you only dwell within yourself, and only you know you. Self-knowing, self-known, you love and smile upon yourself. That circle, which begotten soul, appeared in you as light reflected. When my eyes had watched it with attention for some time, within itself and colored like it in itself, to me seemed painted with our effigy, so that my sight was set on it completely. There's a problem here. Effigy means a mirror image. Okay? What he's saying is this: within the Holy Trinity, there is an image of us.
again what I just said. I glossed over it very simply because I didn't think he was gonna go into this, but the Trinity is you. Okay. The Bible says the kingdom of heaven is within you. We're getting very esoteric, very poetic here, but essentially what Dante is trying to say is that you are both a mind, a body, and a spirit. I think the mind is God the Father, the spirit is the Holy Spirit, and the body is the Son of God. It literally is just that. And like most people don't break it down this way. There's some significance about this, and then this goes into how we can somewhat control the material plane. We don't have to get into that much detail, but what he's saying is that we are representations of God. When God created man, he created man in his image. And the original is Elohim, which is both masculine and feminine. So it's in their image. So you're all parts of God inside of you. That's there's a whole lot of hoops I jumped through to get to that conclusion, but just that's really what he's saying here.
We are in God. We are at the very essence of God. We are within God. How's that possible? This should not be happening. Okay? This is the deepest, darkest secret of the universe now. How is it that a human is within God itself? That should not be possible. We are
It's the imagination. That's the every great mind or esoteric principle all goes back to this idea that all is mind. It, whenever you hear like some secret of the universe, whenever you hear any sort of like secret doctrine, that's what it is that you're the projector. That everything you see is forced by your perception, and everything that you see is purely your own observation that confirms that observation.
Separate. God is good, we are evil, right? That's what Augustine told us. Keep on going. As the geometer intently seeks to square the circle, if you don't know where the phrase square the circle comes from, it comes from this, okay? But he cannot reach through thought on thought the principle he needs. So it's a paradox. He can't figure it out. This is the ultimate paradox. He cannot figure out what's going on. So I searched that strange sight. I wish to see the way in which our human effigy stood the circle and found place in it. How is it we are in God? What is going on here? And my own wings were far too weak for that. Okay? So he's been, for the past 20 years, trying to figure out why this is the case. But then my mind was struck by light that flashed, and with this light received what had been asked. He now has an inspiration. He now can imagine what God is. He now knows the answer. He knows the
It's going to be imagination.
answer. He's figured out the universe. He's figured it out. Okay, and this is it. Here, force failed my high fantasy, but my design wheel were moved already, like a wheel revolving uniformly by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Uh-oh. This is the ending, guys. He doesn't tell us anything. He doesn't tell us what he saw.
So it's if he's using love, what it is it's this it's like almost like this connection in between all of us, something that ties us together, some spirit, some collective unconscious, some force, some essence, some shared spirit. But I think just because Blake was so obsessed with it, it has to be imagination.
Okay. We spent, I don't know, years reaching this point. And Dante has figured it out. And he's not going to tell us. Why won't he tell us? Because it's a jigsaw puzzle, right?
Because
Because it's
the whole
something that you have
point
to figure out
is
for
you have to
yourself.
figure it out yourself.
This thing only works if you
It's like it's Kierkegaard's leap of faith. Nothing in this world can make you believe God except faith. And once you understand faith, then you understand God. It's something you can't learn. It's something you have to experience. Think I can tell you what to do in your life, but you're not going to listen until you do it yourself. It's that sort of idea of things. It's that these ideas have to be discovered and felt for yourself, or else they're not going to make sense. And that's really the point he's making. And it's very well done when you really think about it, because you're getting to some climactic ending, and then he's like, "Nah, you gotta do the work yourself." It's very funny.
you spend the time putting the pieces together. Okay? And it's a lifetime journey. Dante has spent 20 years doing this, okay? So I encourage you all to go on this journey. But you know what? This journey is way too long. So I'll give you my version of the jigsaw puzzle answer today, okay? It may
And the thing about this too is, I don't know if he's gonna say it, but his solution to the jigsaw puzzle, my solution to the jigsaw puzzle, it's gonna be different because we have our own individual experiences, and that's why Dante leaves it at this. And in fact, it's way more genius than giving an actual answer, because if somebody actually does the work and applies themselves and studies these things and thinks about it and finds the answer in their heart, it's going to be their own version of it. It's going to be the same singular line. It's going to be the same singular thread, but it's going to become from an understanding of the individual. And it's very, this is very interesting.
not be the best answer. It may not be even the right answer. But it is an answer, okay? To what Dante is saying. Remember, this is a mystery. This is a paradox. This is a puzzle. It's something that you have to unravel for yourself. But I will tell you my understanding. All right? Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of Paradise. And this is when Dante is with Beatrice. Who is Beatrice? Beatrice is someone that Dante has loved all his life. They met when they were 10 years old, their families were friends. But unfortunately, Beatrice came from a very wealthy, high-status family. And Dante was wealthy, but not as wealthy as Beatrice's family. So Beatrice was betrothed to someone of her social status. And she died when she was 24, giving birth. Okay? Dante never forgot about her. She wrote poetry after poetry, reminiscing about her, celebrating her. He wrote Divine Comedy for her. And to
Imagine that's crazy when you think about it. Like, one of the greatest works ever was written about love that was lost. Very, it's very,
basically pay
wow.
him back, she would like to visit him in heaven, okay? So now they're in heaven. And you would think like, okay, they're in heaven, they love each other, they can do whatever they want. Maybe they'll have sex, maybe they'll just snuggle, maybe they'll, I don't know, eat chocolate candy, who knows, okay? But what they do is they start asking themselves questions about the universe. They're in heaven and they want to know about the secrets of the universe. How do the stars work? How does the moon work, okay? So this is what Beatrice says to Dante. Direct your mind to God in gratefulness, she said, Beatrice. He has brought us to the first star, which is the moon, okay? In this cosmology, the first star is the moon. I answered, with the
Okay, that's, I would not have known that. That's very interesting. So,
most devotion I can summon, I thank him who has brought me far from the mortal world. But now tell me, okay? The first thing he does is, hey, I want to ask you a question. What are the dark marks on this planet's body? Okay? Where are the dark marks on the moon? Next slide, please. Okay. So they talk, and Beatrice says, your mortal mind can't possibly comprehend the truth, but try. Tell me what you think causes the dark spots on the moon. And Donnie answers, what seems to us diverse up here is caused, I think, by matter dense and rare. Okay? What does he mean by this? Let me explain. What he's saying is this. The moon has parts that are dense and rare. Dense just means
I feel like it's interesting because most of us would be like, "Oh, he's talking about asteroids. He's predicting it," but it's definitely something much more interesting.
there's lots of rocks, okay? Rare means like there's an opening. So light will pass through what is rare, what is hollow, and so it becomes dark. But light will hit dense parts like mountains, and it'll be reflected back, okay? And that's why there are dark spots on the moon. And this is the generally accepted theory. But Beatrice says, no, 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 you're wrong, okay? You're absolutely wrong. There are two possible explanations for this. The first explanation is the moon, there's some parts that are completely hollow. Light just passes completely through. But then ask yourself, a solar eclipse. In a solar eclipse, the moon is able to cover the sun completely, right? But in a solar eclipse, there's be some light that if
Okay, this he's going with a scientific explanation. I thought he was going to give something more interesting because there is the moon in many like older religions as well as more esoteric doctrine is very, very significant. Um, has to do with like rebirth, creation, recharging. The moon cycles mean something in terms of how you're reacting. It really there's a lot of significance with the moon, and I'm shocked he's taking it this way. Maybe he's gonna come up with a point at the end of this,
the
but
moon, there are some parts of the moon that is hollow, there should be some holes in the solar eclipse, right? And then she's like, okay, then your theory is there are some caverns in the moon that go deep, okay? But I'm going to show you that's not the case either. In the spiritual universe, she's not talking about the physical universe. She's talking about the spiritual universe. All light
okay, I'm glad because I thought he was gonna. I always get disappointed when I think the video is gonna be taken to an interesting place, and then it just becomes like a science lecture. It's like, dude, I've learned science my whole life. I don't. It's just boring to me. Same thing as history. I don't care about history. I want to learn about poetry. I want to learn about the depth of the world, not the facts of the world. There's a very like I hate this like obsession now with like, oh, facts over feelings or this over that. Like, who cares? Like no matter what your argument is, you can find facts to support it. And like if you need proof of this, literally talk to the craziest person that you can even imagine, and they have facts that they think back up what they're trying to say. Okay? Maybe they're true. Maybe they're true, but does it justify their world? Probably not. But you can find facts to support everything. Facts overflow the world. Okay? It's just I hate this obsession with like, oh well, we just bring you the facts, we just do this, we just do like whenever somebody says we only talk about facts here, they are about to spout the most bullshit you've ever heard because you wouldn't have to qualify it with that if the opposite wasn't true.
reflects brightly, no matter where it is, because light comes from the essence of God. Okay, move on. All right. So Can you skip this, please? Okay, you can skip this as well, actually. All right, so then she just says, okay, you don't believe me. So here's what you're going to do. We will do an experiment. Guys, they're in heaven. And doing an experiment. Why? Because Dante doesn't believe her. Dante thinks she's full of crap. Okay? So she say, let's do an experiment. Right? This is not a revolution. If you don't believe someone, do an experiment. All right? It's okay to doubt. Doubt is heavenly. It's divine. Get an experiment where
That's such an important point, and I feel like I don't know why people in this world like I'm saying people in this world because myself included, but like there's this idea that you know everything. There's this idea that, I know better than this person, I know better than this person, and you won't even look at the data. You won't even look at what's in front of you. You won't even think about it for a mere second. I know I was just talking about how facts can be very difficult to, kind of make sense of, but it's up to us to have the discernment to, um, determine what is true and what isn't. And I think that's really what's lacking in this world is that, you can see something that looks good, but if it's too good to be true, maybe it is. And I think we've kind of lost that ability to see that. I feel like we've kind of lost that ability to judge things for ourselves. Instead, we are part of this group, so we have to go with this group's explanation. We're part of this organization, or we support this policy, so we must blindly follow what the leaders say. And it's really just groupthink. It really is just, falling to the whims of the crowd, as Gustave Le Bon would say, is losing your ability to actually have judgment because you are part of a collective. You are no longer an individual. And when we lose our individuality, that's when we lose what makes us us. And there's no point to go in this world as a collective. There really isn't any benefit.
you to try could free you from your cavell. If the cavell is all light reflects just as brightly as anywhere, okay? And the source of your arts course springs from experiment. Taking 3 mirrors, okay? This is an experiment. And you guys can actually do this at home as well. Place a pair of them at equal distance from you. Set a third in midway between those two, but further back. Then, turning toward them, at your back half place a light that kindles those 3 mirrors and returns to you, reflected by them all. Okay? Although the image in the farthest glass will be of lesser size, there you will see that it must match the brightness of the rest. All right, so here's the experiment, okay? All right, there's a candle.
See, actually,
There's a candle.
he's not actually gonna do it.
And there's 3 mirrors. The third is the farthest, okay? And you're holding the candle. Within the 3 candles are these images of you holding the candle. Now, in the third mirror, you'll be smaller. What Beatrice is saying is the candle will just be as bright. Is that true physically? It is true physically, okay? You can actually do this at home. Now, what's really fun about this experiment is you can keep on going. This is the first layer, right? Let's do another layer, okay? Let's do another layer. 5 mirrors, all back, okay? Are they still as bright, the candle?
I'm wondering where this point's going to, because I feel like this is like, hopefully it's somewhere interesting.
The answer is yes. How about a third layer? Okay? Are they just as bright? The answer is yes. Let's go 1,000,000 layers. Will they just be as bright as the first candle? The answer is yes. All right? That's experiment. It proves that no matter how far the candle is, if it is reflected by the first candle, it will just be as bright as the other candles. All right? That's experiment. Sorry.
What's up, Zachariah? How's everything, man? Good to see you back.
Well, hold on. Now, guys, let me ask you this question. What is this? You remember? It's a Godhead. It's what Dante saw when he experienced God. You remember, he saw 3 circles, and inside were 3 humans. In effigy.
Godhead is, yeah, it's just Gnosticism. A Godhead is literally just that everything is God, in essence, that everything is a piece of God all fractured. It's it's very anticlimactic, and that's where he's taking it.
This is experiment, okay? So he's telling us that God is that candle that burns in you and reflects the ultimate good. It reflects the good. And it burns in everyone. And it unifies everyone together. The more you love,
That's
the brighter the candle burns.
certainly that makes sense because that's why Blake was so obsessed with it because this myth is underlying everything in this work, and perhaps it's the most mythic in its scale.
And the brother kind of burns the closer you are to God. When you love, you experience God. That is why you are without sin when you love. Okay?
It's interesting.
This is the Godhead. Okay? Does that make sense?
Blake's interpretation of God, William Blake, if people aren't familiar, William Blake is like my favorite writer. That's why I keep referencing him. But Blake's idea of God is that God is the imagination, and you know, we think of true works of the imagination, true works of creativity that are aspirational in nature, and you can't quite deny that inference. You're doing well. Reading The Psychology of Money right now. What about you? Well, what am I reading, or how am I doing? I guess I can answer both. Right now, I'm reading the is it Purgatorio, the second part of the Divine Comedy, and I'm doing pretty good right now. Just chugging along, just trying to, stay consistent with this and, manage the rest of the world. And yeah, nothing to really complain about.
Okay, go back. All right. Sorry.
But I did like The Psychology of Money. I think that's one of the better books when it comes to finance. I think a lot of the books when it comes to finance are like, I don't want to say worthless, but I'm gonna say it like worthless because a lot of stuff it's like you could get online, you could get from somebody that's very knowledgeable. Maybe you don't have access to somebody that's very knowledgeable when it comes to stuff, but you know, there's like a very short list of finance books that are worth it, and at that, most of them say the same stuff. So it's like, oh, you read 100 finance books. It's like, are you even learning anything new at this point, or are you just repeating the same thing, thinking you're being productive? But Psychology of Money is interesting because it's not so much about investing. While it does give you advice, it's interesting because it tells you how to think about money, which is a unique angle I don't think many people have even thought about, let alone wrote a book about. And I'm not sure how far you are in it right now, but what I really took away from it is that, think about money as your freedom. Think about setting up your financial stability in terms of setting up your freedom and being able to, you know, do the things that you want to do on a daily basis. And that's really the way you should view your estate.
Sorry. Can you go back, please? Okay. Sorry. Next slide. All right. Next slide. No, 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 no. Forward. Yes. Okay. This is the ending of the Divine Comedy. All right. Let's read it again. Now that we have this information. Here force failed my high fantasy, but my desire and will were moved already, like a wheel revolving uniformly by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. He tells us here, God is love, love is God. Love is the universe, is the force that binds everything together. It is the unifying force of the universe.
Rumi said the same thing. I don't remember when Rumi was writing. It does not say. It's definitely somewhere in this book. I just can't find it quickly. We'll move on. But Rumi said something very similar that the entire universe is connected by love.
It is the force.
It's almost Taoist in a sense too that everything's tied together through the Tao. Or Buddha said something similar. Taoism's just kind of Buddhism stripped of all the necessity for a sort of central figure.
Force that makes things move brightly. Okay? The problem is before we could only see, but now we can now imagine. Okay? God is something you cannot see. God is something that you must imagine.
Okay, so this is why Blake was so obsessed with it because imagination is God, imagination is reality, and this was the point I made earlier that a lot of these like more esoteric teachings are always going to lead you in that direction. Whether you believe it or not, that's what all of them are going to say. They're going to say that you're the projector, that your thoughts, that your perception, that the things that you believe and you accept are creating everything. That's more or less what they're all going to say.
Okay. So that's divine comedy. Any questions about that so far?
So like, who's he writing
Um,
And again, it makes sense why Dante was kind of, I think he was exiled for this, and it would make sense because he's taking away the middleman. Like, because if you can access God without a middleman, if you can access God without the church, then the church ceases to have power. I feel like we did a stream a few weeks ago where it was basically saying that money is finite because it gives power to the institution, and if money was abundant, then there would be no need for these centralized systems of power. It's the same sort of thing. It's that the churches of the world have taken the means of enlightenment and commodified them. And what Dante's trying to do, especially, you could see what he's trying to do just from the fact that he wrote in Tuscan instead of Latin. It's he's trying to bring this to the people. He's trying to bring this message to the people, the inspiration that the people need to no longer be reliant on other people.
that's a really good question. Who is he writing to? Who is his audience? Um, so he's writing in Tuscan rather than Latin, and he calls it the Commedia. So I think he's trying to avoid the Catholic Church, right? Because at this time, the Catholic Church
I hate that I literally just said this, but yeah, he's trying to enlighten the people through this writing, and he's trying to break them away from the necessity of a church, the necessity of a system.
writes mainly in Latin. So he's trying to avoid the Catholic Church. That's his main enemy, okay? Because if the
This is so funny because it's the same thing Nietzsche's saying when he says God is dead and man killed him. Nietzsche just says it in a much more flagrant way, but essentially his point there is that the institutions of enlightenment are institutions of power, and they no longer aspire humanity to be great. They're no longer necessary because the average person is seeing that these things are actually just frauds. It's very interesting that he's making the same point as Dante.
Catholic Church actually understood what he was doing, they would have basically burned his manuscript, right? So I know it sounds strange, but he's really writing for the universe, if that makes any sense. He's leaving it here as a secret box. And then someone in the future is going to come and they're going to read it. And it's going to entice them. It's like they're curious as to what this is. And at first they can't figure it out, but they stick at it. And over time, it begins to transform.
This is like this is almost the idea of a secret society, is that you have the average people, then the initiated people who know all, and then you have people even above them who are even more initiated, and then more and more and more. And at the top, you have the person that sees the whole pyramid, sees the whole structure, but the people at the bottom don't see what's actually going on. This is it's a basic structure of any good corporation, any good cult, any good conspiracy, any good secret society. It's the knowledge at the top that frees you from the rest of the system, but you can't get it unless you work your way up. It's it it's very weird when you start thinking of these ideas and you start seeing it in application in
How
the
they see the
world.
world. Okay? Does that make sense? He's a prophet, he's a poet. And so he's not really writing it to make money or because he has to. He's writing because he has a moral mission to speak the truth. And when you speak the truth, you're speaking to the universe, not to an individual. All right?
Did he have a patron, or did the manuscript circulate in his lifetime?
Yeah, no, no, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so, okay. At this time, remember before we said that all writing projects had to be sponsored by a patron, and before it was kings. So he does have a patron. It's like a count or something. And clearly there are parts in the Divine Comedy which are appealing to his patron, right? But
You even see this with Shakespeare, which was, I don't remember what time Shakespeare was writing, but I'm assuming it's later than Dante. But uh, Shakespeare had to appeal to the the king. That's why he wrote that one story about the King Henry. I can't remember, but you see this recurring through a lot of different artists that they have to in some way use the symbols and in some way appeal to the master. This is what Machiavelli had to do as well. Machiavelli had to sort of appeal to the Medicis when he wrote The Prince, and some people think it's actually a satirical dig at the Medicis, and he was really just kind of making fun of the way of life of rulers. And I find that to be far more interesting than the actual writings of The Prince.
He's really using this as a pretext in order to speak the truth. Okay, does that make sense? He needs funding. I mean, he needs a patron. But what drives him is obviously not the money. What drives him is he believes God has spoken to him, and he believes that he knows God. And he believes that in the Divine Comedy are the secrets of the universe. He himself probably doesn't know all the secrets, but he believes that they're all there if someone is willing to look hard enough.
Okay, so that's not true. Dante is in the final moments of the play admitting he doesn't know the truth, but he can experience it. And that experience is the truth of the universe. That's really the whole point of it, and that's the ultimate paradox. It's that the eternal cannot be understood, it has to be experienced, it has to be felt. A good example of this is go out somewhere beautiful in nature and feel that common feeling, and then try to look at a picture of it and try to recapture that same essence. You can't do it. It's the experience itself that is everything we're looking for. It's the leap of faith, as Kierkegaard would say. It's amazing how Kierkegaard was able to put this into a philosophical argument. It's just very boring to go through. I have someone explain it. I've explained it previously, but it's
Does that make
far
sense?
more interesting than he could make
Okay.
it.
But you're right. He did have a patron. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Okay.
Maybe just a small one with that. I really like the translation here.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
accessible.
Yes.
Who's the translator?
Okay. So there have been multiple translations of the Divine Comedy. This man is named Alan Mendelbaum, and he's the one I prefer the most,
Oh,
just
this is
because
the
he's
one
the
I have.
most
It's weird.
relatable. He's most accessible. I mean, there are these translations
It
by
is pretty easy. It's not
Longfellow, which is beautiful, but it's really complicated.
it's pretty easy language to understand. You know what he's talking about. It's not like, sometimes you read authors and you're like, I don't know what this word is, and it kind of takes you out of it. Where other translators are able to make ideas more simple and more digestible. And there's something very special about a good translator and a good translator that has like a good understanding of the author, because certain ideas are very hard to capture, and certain writers are very difficult to one understand, and two take that same essence and put it to another language that might not operate the same way. Never heard a student speak. This is the longer form version of his channel, I think. So I think he definitely, I mean, I would guess he cuts out most of their questions unless they're pretty good, and he keeps it very focused for the other types of videos. Seems like he has
I think
a few channels.
Ezra Pound has also done a translation, and then there are translations which are rhyme. Okay, so there are different translations. Minimum is I think just the easiest to teach. Okay, and so because
'Cause Ezra Pound was, I think he was the one responsible for James Joyce, so it's either a gift or a curse. But it would be much older language, and probably more difficult for us to read, um, unless you're well acquainted with the style of writing he probably writes in.
because of translation issues, this again was written in Tuscan. I try to avoid close reading. Okay, because with close reading you want to analyze the word specifically, the diction, but I can't do that because it depends on the translation. Okay, but the ideas are the same. Okay, but thanks. So this is manageable.
Some people are traumatized that they have to analyze word choice. Something other than English.
Okay. We'll do a lot of
There's definitely stuff lost with this though, because you could tell Dante's so intentional with everything he's saying. It's like the same thing as the Bible. Like there's all of these exegesis and gematria interpretations of the original text, and I don't think I've explained gematria in a while, so I'll do it right now. But basically, gematria is the idea that every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a certain value assigned with it, and if you take that value and you take certain phrases and you do certain, it's essentially just old school code breaking and old school like we have nothing better to do, so we're going to really deeply analyze this and come up with deeper meanings and spiritual principles that are hidden inside this text and try to decode it and try to find even more of God through this experience. And this is a Gnostic or a Rosicrucian or Freemason or like a Kabbalist kind of practice. But there definitely is that with the original Dante, because some of the decisions are so intentional. You can tell what he's trying to say is very important in certain moments. The reference he's using, the specific way he's carrying it, the structure of the work itself is 34 chapters, 33 chapters, and 33 chapters. And whenever you see that 33, just know something's there. You might not understand it, you might not get it, but something's there whenever you see that 33.
close reading when we get to English literature, which is like Shakespeare and Milton, okay? Because then you can actually do close reading. But with translation, you can't do close reading. It's too dependent on the translation. Okay, any more questions? Okay,
This is
so
why Blake later in his life, like a few years before he died, devoted himself entirely to the Divine Comedy because he was doing a close translation, a close reading of it, and trying to get the exact specific details of what Dante was trying to say. And there's people that like argue for certain versions of the Bible or certain translations or certain this or that. Like, just get one that you can read, just get one that you can enjoy. And then when you really like master the text, when you really understand what's trying to be said, then you can start reading different translations. Then you can start, looking towards the best versions or looking towards, the most consistent. But I think the bottom line with all this stuff is you just have to read it. Like I don't like to give you any excuses in life, and I feel like that's a huge excuse is like, oh well, I can't find this translation, or I don't like this version or this version or this version. Like whenever you like go on a channel and they're talking about different versions of the Bible and this or that, like maybe there's a point being made, but like overall I think a lot of the bulk of stuff is there. And, you know, if you're not reading it doesn't make a difference. So
can we do one more slide, the Augustine slide, and then we'll end. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's go to Augustine. Okay. Augustine says here, man lives by the standard of man, not by the standard of God. He is like the devil. Okay. Guys, we are in God because God is in us. God is the candle, the love that burns in us. If we love, the candle burns brighter. It brings us closer to God. Okay. This is how we know we're doing good, because we know. Okay. Our hearts will know. Your faces will know. People will know. Everyone knows what good is. Pride will be the start of the evil will. No, pride is who we are. We all strive to be better.
I don't think he understands what pride means. So pride is in a biblical sense, because we have to talk about this in context of Dante. Pride means to put yourself before God, to say that this accomplishment is mine and only mine. And I feel like Dante wouldn't disagree that pride is a bad thing because it denies your connection with the infinite, it denies your connection with God, it denies your lack of separation from other people. Because if God is everything, then everyone you interact with is also them, and there's a connection there. So I feel like he would deny that as well. But that's just a nitpick.
His was a venial transgression when he refused to desert his wife's companion. Life, love is sin. Love is without sin. Love is the greatest force in the universe because it is God. We're created out of nothing. No, we're created out of God, okay? God is in us. God is with us.
we're created out of nothing makes no sense.
The heavenly city was created by self-love. The love of God was created by contempt of self. All right, so this is a really important idea. But the idea is this. Love only exists between humans. It does not exist outside of humans. You cannot love money. You cannot love money. You cannot love chocolate. You can only love each other. Because God is within us. Okay? If you love God, you don't love God because God is an idea. You have to love each other. You have to love Beatrice. You have to love your mother. You have to love your son. Okay? In heaven, there will be freedom of will, enjoying, unfailing the delight of eternal joys. Sorry, guys. Okay? Divine Comedy says this. There is no end to the universe. At no point will we know everything.
I feel like this is like such a weird idea that anything, like anyone could even think that everything will ever be figured out or that things will end. Like, I guess you could make the argument like of Schrodinger's cat that like if nobody is there to observe the end of the universe, then the like if all life is extinguished and there's no such thing that could observe whatever, then the universe is ended. Maybe you can make that argument, but aside from that, things just things can't end. Things will just go on in a different way or a different manner.
We exist because we are continuing God's legacy. When we imagine things, we are engaged in the act of creation. That is God. We are like God. And when we imagine, when we love, okay, that is our ultimate mission in life, to love and to imagine. Because then we create new worlds for God to celebrate. Okay? All right. All right. So that was.
All right, I thought it was pretty good. Let me see how long I've been streaming for. 45 minutes. I will go through this 5 minute video. Hopefully it's doesn't take me too long. Um, this is just I found this video. I was say on Wednesday, yeah. It was on Wednesday when I was finding things to talk about on the show. And yeah, I like Robert Greene. He's the thing about Robert Greene is I don't really study him anymore. I don't really read him anymore. But I have like an eternal gratitude to him because his books were a very gimmicky way of getting me into certain authors such as Jung, such as Nietzsche, such as Dostoevsky. Um, he's really a good baseline where to start with interesting ideas and breaking them down and synthesizing them. I think that's really what he's great at doing is he takes ideas that he sees recur throughout time and he kind of puts them out there and puts them in a way and is able to market his books in a very effective way that really sells a lot of them and it really introduces a whole lot of people into an entire world of fiction or literature or philosophy or whatever he's introducing you to. He's putting these ideas out there and making them more prevalent and I really enjoy what he does. And then you have people that like are like, oh, the 48 Laws of Power is an evil book. It's like, maybe, but like you could say anything's bad. It's always the way that people use information that makes it good or bad. And if you can't discern that, then you need a little bit of help, man.
Captures life. He captures all of those qualities. It's like a river that just overflows everything. Hello everyone. I have the pleasure of being able to introduce my absolute favorite writer on the planet since I was a young.
It's interesting that he's his favorite writer. I guess that makes sense. He has a deep, I was about to say obsession. I don't know if he's obsessed with Napoleon, but he has a reverence for Napoleon that only a true Frenchman can have.
Young man. He's sitting here right
The only person that I've seen reference Napoleon more is Gustave Le Bon, and he was French, so that's why I said that.
next to me. No, I'm just kidding. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. I think I discovered Nietzsche when I was about 15 years old.
Dude, he was definitely an edgy teen if that's the case. I can't imagine if I read Nietzsche when I was younger, like how how badly I would have
I
interpreted it,
probably
how
didn't
badly
really
it would have
understand
taken
a
me.
word of what he wrote. It took years, but I have over the years had many writers that I loved when I was 18, and I look at them now and I go, what the hell was I thinking? People in my 20s, well, I don't know. In my 30s and 40s, I look back and Yeah, it's okay. Nietzsche's the one person, I swear to you, that I never ever grow tired. I might, if I live so long, be in my 90s.
I can see that, yeah. I mean, because he writes aphorisms that are like very much open to interpretation. And this is why I hate when people are like, "Well, Nietzsche said this. He doesn't mean this." It doesn't, like, dude, he writes aphorisms. It's basically poetry on paper. It's poetry disguised as philosophy. So you can take it however the fuck you want. Like, postmodernism is based off of Nietzsche, and Nietzsche would hate all postmodernism because it goes against his idea of the Übermensch. It's very stupid. But
90s, I'll still be reading Nietzsche. It'll still be relevant. It'll still be socking me in the stomach the same way it did when I was 15 years old, even though I didn't understand a word of what he was writing about. So what is it about this strange man with his bushy mustache, Nietzsche, that was so compelling to me? Well, he's different from all the other philosophers out there. All the other philosophers, they have this kind of idea about life, you know, Kant or Schopenhauer or Hegel or Plato. It's this idea that this is what life is. They have an idea, a concept, a system of which they
I see what he's saying, but at the same time, Nietzsche had a system as well. His system was more adaptable, but it's a system of the self. It's a system of I must be everything that I can be. How do I become everything that I can be? What aspirational values can I find within myself to be unbounded by the whims of the crowd, become a person that no longer needs to look for anyone else for approval? How can I do that for myself? And that's a system in and of itself. You know, even nihilism is a system because belief in nothing is belief in something. It's just like it's just a paradox that you'll never get away from.
They approach every problem and they put it in their great system. And you read it and you go, yeah, that's interesting. But there's something else missing that's not quite capturing life. Nietzsche captures life. He captures all of those qualities. It's like a river that just overflows everything. He contradicts himself from one book to the other, but you don't notice it because he's so alive, he's so authentic in each moment.
I think him contradicting himself is like very much intentional because there's a line that at least stuck out to me. He said, "All morality is contradictory." And what he's saying is that in order for there to be peace, there must have been war to win that peace. In order for you to be nice, you have to also have the capacity to be bad because you can't be nice without knowing what's wrong. You know what I mean? Without dark, there's no light. It's that sort of juxtaposition of life that is necessary to create any sort of understanding of things. And that's why you don't really have a problem when he contradicts himself because it's almost like Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman said, "I'm full of multitudes." Of course, I contradict myself. It, it's just you can't be a human being without being hypocritical. You can't be a human being without, in some way, not contradicting yourself. It's impossible.
Moment. He's not trying to create a system. He's not trying to fit all of human experience, all of the ideas, and preach to you about a particular way of looking at the world, a particular way of being. He's just going with the moment. He's expressing things that he's feeling, very powerful emotions. Some of them contradict himself, but he hates systems. And it's very refreshing to read somebody like that who's so lifelike. And
It is. I like to think of Nietzsche as closer to a poet than a philosopher. I feel like I said that before, but I really want to reiterate because it's almost like Heraclitus. Heraclitus is a philosopher, but his works feel more like spiritual teachings. And it's when you can kind of transcend genres and not be put into one box, when you can kind of combine the analytical with the expressive, we get closer to reality. I think we have a left brain and a right brain for a reason. It's because the world is both rule based and chaos based. And it's the synthesis of these two things, the almost lying in the gray area and lying in the contradiction that gives us an understanding of life.
so authentic. You know, it's kind of like a volcano that's erupting. He was a very emotional man, and he poured those emotions into all of his books and ideas, but in a controlled, he's also an incredibly brilliant writer with beautiful style of language.
His language is very confronting, and that's why a lot of people don't like it because it's like hitting you over the head with a sledgehammer. Whereas you have writers that say the exact same thing, such as Emerson, who literally would probably agree with Nietzsche 99% of the way, but he says things in an uplifting, hopeful, spiritual way that fills your spirit with hope and fills your heart with goodness. Whereas Nietzsche's like, your entire life is a lie and you're an idiot. And it's like that may be true, but it's a confronting reality that we don't always want to face. And I liken it to that friend that tells you not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. That's really how I would classify Nietzsche's writings. I'll be back in a minute. Give me a second. I'm back. Ah, let's get back into
I
this.
often, when I try and imitate a writer, I wish I could be like Nietzsche. He will have these sections.
It it's kind of impossible. You can approximate, you can get close, but there's a certain Nietzsche that only Nietzsche could do, and it's very rare where you see a philosopher that has that kind of style, and that's really what defines him. It's also what led to him not being recognized while he was alive because he was just ahead of his time. You always have that visionary, that person that kind of was born too early and will not see their time under the sun while they're still alive. Think of Kafka. I think he's another good example. There's a lot of names that you could say that they just won't ever understand the impact they have on thought, and Nietzsche's one of them.
And everything is kind of divided up. He never writes like in a lot of his books. Some of them, it's not true, but a lot of his books are sort of short, a page or 2 page or 3 pages on a single idea. I remember reading about these excerpts when I was a kid, where he would have
That's
one side.
that's really my favorite style of his writing. His earlier stuff is not necessarily that way, and that's why his earlier stuff isn't as fun to read. But like my favorite work by him is probably The Gay Science, and I think that's some of the finest writing he ever did. And he starts it with poems, he ends it with songs, I think, or maybe it's the other way around that he starts it with songs and ends it with poems. But it's him at his most playful and him at his most expressive, and to me that's why I like it so much because it has this almost heart to it that some of his other works don't have, and perhaps that's because he didn't get the success he was looking for and ultimately declined into mental incapability. But that's a story for another day.
Of the argument where someone would say, well, this is what's going on. And then he would have the opposite side, which was clearly his opinion, and he would meld this into one argument. And it was like he was arguing with himself. It was so interesting. It's so unusual. Nobody writes like him. Nobody thinks like him. And the thing is, I'm reading right now a book that's discussing his life, actually at this very moment, for a chapter I'm writing in my new book. I knew it, but I didn't quite realize it. In the 15 years which he wrote
I
his
still
most
don't think
important.
I don't think his new book's out yet. So I feel like I would have seen it at bookstores or I would have heard about it. But I'm interested because it's called Sublime, which I don't know if I've heard him talk about what it's about. But I'm assuming he's just going to be synthesizing different parts of life and different aspects of life to come to some sort of understanding, as most of his works do.
Works, in which he was basically continually alone. He was physically suffering pain that is very hard for most people to understand. Every moment of his life, he was dealing with incredible pain in his body. He had headaches. He had all sorts of gastrointestinal problems. He says, mornings he was throwing up all the time. He was taking all kinds of medications to help him just get through the day. And yet,
He like moved to different parts of Europe too to try to find a climate that agreed with him, but none of it ended up working. Spoiler
he
alert,
created this
unfortunately.
idea called amor fati, love of fate.
He he didn't create this idea. Somebody told me that this was his idea as well, and for like a year I was saying this was his idea. It's not his idea, it's a Stoic principle. And what should cue you to this is that it's in Latin. So why would Nietzsche be writing in Latin if he wrote in the late 1800s? That no, unless he's actually that eccentric. But even Nietzsche had his limits when it came to that. But Morfati is an idea that he began to accept, and in fact, he has a quote that might be more famous than this idea. It's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's so funny that Britney Spears cited Nietzsche because I feel like he would be rolling in his grave if he knew that. Right? Is that Britney Spears song? I don't know. But Morfati is basically the idea of love your fate, love everything that happens to you because it makes you who you are. And without those experiences, you wouldn't be the same person and you wouldn't be able to tackle the challenges that are going to face you. And, you can see Nietzsche somewhat really embraces the Heraclitus idea of life is about balance. Life is about give and take. Life is about ups and downs. And it's our downs which give our ups any sort of importance, any sort of appreciability. You know, if every day of your life was good, then what would your metric of good be? You wouldn't have one. You wouldn't understand what you were having. You wouldn't be able to appreciate it. You wouldn't have any gratitude because you can't understand good without bad. That's essentially the point of this. And love your bad times because they are a signal that your good times are coming.
Embracing your fate, embracing the pain of life. I thought that was a beautiful thing when I read it. Through the lens of how much he suffered and he created that philosophy is actually mind-blowing. And so that idea of not fitting into a system is what we call perspectival. Nietzsche does have one philosophy, which is everybody has a perspective in life. And that perspective actually changes in the course of your life. That's what it means to be alive. Nobody has one set idea. There's no one truth out there. There is no one reality, okay? And one of his most famous arguments is in the Bible. Pontius Pilate asks Christ who he is. He says, Ecce homo, here is the man. And what is truth? Pontius Pilate asks, I am the truth. And Nietzsche goes, no, nobody is the truth. There is no one truth. Everything depends on people's perspective.
This is where you see a lot of this is where you can see like the string of postmodernism is what is right, what is beautiful, what is good, and that sort of fractured perception that then creates the world and creates systems of power and systems of enslavement. And you take it however far you want, but it's a very interesting idea that Nietzsche really popularized in the idea of perception. Actually, he didn't popularize it, Plato popularized it, but it seems like all great philosophers come back to this idea of what I see is only what I see, and what others see is warped by their experience, is warped by their lens in which they view the world in, and that's why I can be so fully confident with my beliefs, and that's why they can be so fully confident with theirs. And it's the individual experiences which create the collective experience, essentially.
Every philosopher has a perspective, and that philosophy might come from the stomach pains that they're having, from the way their brain is wired, from a headache they have in the morning. So, to reiterate, the lifelikeness of Nietzsche, the fact that he captures the contradictory, the various emotions we all feel, the back and forth, the richness of life in his philosophy is unique. There is nobody like him on this planet. I just am always astounded when I read him. He always makes me feel like I'm this small because I can't compare to his absolute brilliance. So that's what
I don't know. It's always so weird when you hear people like I don't know, because like Nietzsche is very smart, but we're all dumb in our own ways, and it's weird where I mean, in his own way, he is a great writer, and it's weird that he lowers himself. But I guess it is some humility. But yeah, with that said, I think I'm gonna end the stream now. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for being here. It was a very fun time. I will try to make some time before Wednesday, but just know Wednesday for sure I will stream. Aside from that, keep reading, guys. Keep exploring, keep learning, and yeah, love you guys so much. Thank you guys. I will catch you in the next stream.